Today, September 2nd, let us pause and take this unique opportunity to recognize a pivotal moment in our nation's history as this date marks 80 years since the end of World War II, 8 decades since peace was declared. Today, the Mason community honors the greatest generation of men and women whose courage shaped the course of history. Fewer than 1% of the 16 million Americans who served in World War II are still with us today. The city of Mason has the extraordinary privilege of being home to several remaining World War II veterans. These veterans stood in the face of unimaginable adversity, not for glory, but for duty, for country, and for one another. Through heartfelt conversations, we have the honor of hearing their incredible stories, all filled with bravery, quiet resilience, and a deep sense of sacrifice and service. May this video serve as a powerful tribute to the sacrifices made and the legacy these veterans will leave behind.
My name is Marion Parrish, and I was in the infantry in World War II. That was the place to be. That's where the action was. And furthermore, all my friends had been drafted. So I felt like a lone wolf.
Everybody was going in. Everybody had to go, you know. I mean, even Elvis Presley, you know. The ship I got on was a big player at Iwo Jima, you know, and I knew the crew that went there, you know. So I was a rangefinder operator up at the top of the ship, you know.
I got right off the basketball court and I went in the service. And they tell you what to do playing basketball, and it's the same way in the service. I went into the service in 45, and I got out in 46. And no front lines. I went in a peacetime.
I went to Pearl Harbor in, I think it was July or August, something like that, before the war. That's why I was at Pearl Harbor during the infamous day. I was right dead center of all the bombs, machine gun fire, and everything.
World War II was the most widespread and deadly conflict in human history, spanning 6 years, involving over 30 countries, and resulting in tens of millions of deaths, ultimately reshaping the course of history. The United States played a pivotal role in World War II, entering the conflict after the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. In just under 2 hours, the strike against the United States Naval Base in Oahu, Hawaii, devastated the Pacific Fleet, sinking or damaging 8 battleships, destroying over 180 aircraft, and killing more than 2,400 Americans. This unprovoked attack marked a turning point in history and prompted the United States to declare war on Japan the following day. By the end of the war in 1945, the United States emerged as a global superpower, instrumental in defeating the Axis powers and shaping the post-war world order. More than 16 million Americans served, tens of millions contributed by working in war industries, and approximately 416,800 military personnel and civilians lost their lives serving their country.
The Japanese had just been strafing across right where I was, but it was at the wash rack. That was the concrete that thick, and I was up on a place where you scrub your clothes. Well, I came off of the rack because the boatswain's mate come out there and says, "You GD kids, get the hell off of here and down to your battle stations." Well, my battle stations, I'm 18 years old, and I hadn't been there long enough to know what to do. So I come tearing out of there, down the steps, over to the other side of the street. Well, the Japs was machine gunning right across where I was. Well, I came down, turned down there 2 steps at a time, and right at the bottom was this top brass. He was an admiral. Bam, right there. Balooey, I ran right smack into him. And I'm standing there, not being able to talk. Because here's doing something that you never ever do. But I buried my head in him like that. Kabowie! After he caught his breath, he says, "You're in a hurry, aren't you, son?" And I thought, he called me son, so he damn well must like me. The battleship Arizona, I helped as many as I could, like 4 or 5. One guy he leaped from the ship. He was already out, or he would have been gone, but the ship was burning. He managed to get off of the ship by leaping from there to the ground. And I took him up to the chow hall in the barracks. I watched his face disappear. It melted and fell down right on the floor. Other members were in the very bow, but there was a bulkhead behind the last bulkhead forward, and it's got dogs, what they call dogs, dog locks. They can move them over, and that seals that bulkhead. There was a few sailors locked into that from that bulkhead forward. But there was an opening, but it was only a small opening, and these sailors were begging me, "Can you get us out?" But there was no out. So they drowned. I watched them drown. It was all awful to watch, have people standing in front of you dying right on the spot and dropping dead right like that.
We had landed in Scotland and took a train to Southampton and took a ferry across to Le Havre, the same camp my father had walked up to in World War I. Same place. That was a kind of a staging area, and from there I was put on a train to Trier, Germany, which is on the Rhine River. That was my first introduction to war, because we were traveling through France on this troop train, and you'd look out and the trees were blasted apart and there was dead animals in the water alongside. I had a Garand M1 rifle. It had a bullet hole in the stock. Had a lot of fantasies about what the guy that had that rifle before me, what had happened to him, you know. There it was. So the unit was ordered then to close out what they called a pocket of Germans in the Ruhr Valley. So almost immediately after I got there, we boarded trucks and went through Germany, through Belgium, through the Netherlands, and through France and back into Germany to the Ruhr Valley, which was the industrial heart of Germany. There were 2 or 3 divisions of Germans in that pocket. They had already surrendered by the time we arrived, much to our relief.
In high school, if you can imagine Mason High School, there was 2 cars in the whole school, the music teacher and mine. My father was a veterinarian, and he had to have 2 automobiles, so I got the odd automobile as I was a junior in high school. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but most people got 4 gallons of gas a week. That was it. But my dad was a veterinarian, and he got unlimited supply. He sent his number 1 car in to be overhauled, and the ration board gave him a whole new set of tickets for the other car. And then I got the other car. I never sold a ticket. I gave a few away maybe to my buddies. You couldn't use a school bus when I was in high school for anything but hauling students to school. You couldn't use a school bus to take the kids to the basketball games. Even the players, they had to get your own way there. The restrictions were that stiff. And shoes, sugar, meat, all that was rationed.
Well, the countries that we were involved in at that point were severely impoverished. We saw a tremendous amount of poverty and people who felt like they had no future. And I guess many of them didn't. They were fighting the day I arrived, and some of the guys have been wounded. But we were at where the bridge crossed the Rhine that movies were made about later on. But I never saw Patton, but his presence was everywhere. You knew you were in his army. You knew you were in a unit that was going to be in the action very quickly. He was that kind of a person. He never dodged a conflict. And a little bit fear that he'd get us in situations that we didn't want to be in.
I was standing watch against the Japanese potential sneaking in, killing me on the spot while I'm trying to protect the airplanes that I'm standing a watch at midnight with a rifle that very doubtful whether it would even shoot or not. And our squadrons that I was attached to only had 2 rifles, 2. That's no armament. That's no military. Don't be caught in the kind of a thing, the ship that we were caught in, with the president that had no sight of armament, of being ready for war at any time. We were not.
When I was in Czechoslovakia guarding a train station with trains coming from Poland and eastern areas and Russian troops on there, and we'd take them off the train. They were obviously escaping, and put them on the train going back. You wondered what's going to happen to these guys, and probably they'd be killed. Probably it would be. But those were the times.
World War II veterans returned home through the massive, highly coordinated effort, Operation Magic Carpet. It was one of the largest repatriation efforts in history. While the return home was deeply emotional and complex, veterans used their experiences to fuel their transition as our nation was eager to rebuild and redefine itself. Other veterans played a vital role in helping rebuild and stabilize war-torn nations across Europe and Asia. many helping facilitate reconstruction projects, training local personnel, supporting democratic institutions, distributing aid, and fostering goodwill through humanitarian efforts. They became ambassadors of peace, resilience, and cooperation, shaping a more stable post-war world.
Germany was cleaning up. I mean, they're industrious people. Right behind my hotel, there's a sort of a back lake there, back up of the ocean, and they were filling that with all the trash. See, the English bombed that city, Bremerhaven, and the English were expecting to get that as their headquarters for shipping. If the Americans got it, they left all the facilities for the shore intact. But from there, for about 3 miles back, they leveled everything. There wasn't nothing but bricks. And they were using that bricks to fill in that lake back there. A lot of Germans, they was climbing up and down. That bank was probably 40 feet high, and where they was filling in, and they was sorting through the brick and whatever they could find. I had a German employee drove the Jeep and took me to the bank, the head bank, and I had to get the amount of money that it required to make the payroll. We'd put it in envelopes in, and we'd bring it back, and the commanding officer and I would sort it out in all those envelopes. I typed a payroll. I typed the largest payroll in a European theater for 6 months. A payroll sheet is like 18 inches long. It's nothing but names, numbers, figures. I would type the whole page, and if I got to the bottom line and I made a mistake, I tore that one up and started over on that page, 18 inches long. You know, a typewriter, no whiteout, no erasers, no type overs, nothing. Everything was just like a printed book when I got done with it.
I came back and landed on the West Coast. It was a civilian-run outfit, so I was watching the cook. He was cooking the meat and throwing it like this to hit it, the pot. He missed the ladle, and he went over and picked it up and threw it in the pot and cooked it. So what I did is they had a place called the store. They sold candy and stuff like that. So I bought a whole box of candy. That's what I lived on from Hawaii to San Francisco.
So they were starting to put ships out of commission by that. That whole San Diego harbor was full of ships. Actually, the way the military was going, they were trying to get rid of people. They weren't trying to add anybody. Truman kept a pretty tight rein on what was spent, you know.
I took a trip, 8-day trip or so to Switzerland while I was there. That was a plus they had for the military. So I signed up. Some went to England. I went down to Switzerland with a group of about 8 men. $68 for 8 days to Switzerland. Oh, they was waiting for any GIs to come in. They hadn't had any tourists for 6-7 years. And they was glad to see us. Went over on a ship, came back on a ship. It was different. We didn't have any problems between the GIs and the civilian population. It was all for one. Civilians too. They sacrificed.
I feel sorry for the guys in Vietnam who came back to disdain and mistreatment. That doesn't say much for our country. I would say that for me, this was a life-changing experience. You had the feeling that you were doing something for the country. There was a lot of patriotism at that point that doesn't exist today, and we're missing that.
For many World War II veterans, the end of their service marked the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter shaped by opportunities that their time in the service made possible. Military service brought not only discipline and confidence, but skills and experience that often translated into civilian success.
I was in charge of making out the rotation every month. So I just happened to add my name a month early to the rotation list. And I'd send those papers over to the captain to sign, and he signed everything I sent to him anyway. So here I go out to the ship, getting ready to walk up the gangplank, and whoever's in charge says, "You're not supposed to be here for another month." I said, "I don't know what happened." I put my own name on it home. I was home, had a job and working. I was still in the service. Went to work for National Cash Register up in Dayton, and they said they never hired anybody that was still in the military.
Glad to be out, really. You want to do what you want to do, you don't want somebody telling you what you have to do, Well, I don't know, it's just a good way to grow up, I thought, A good transition from high school to the world, Kind of went right basically into college, right straight out of Navy. Paid it all. 2 years in the service, and with my training in the military, I didn't have to take ROTC training. I got credit for that. Got credit for about a year's worth of credit from the Navy service.
I was a different person. I was. A lot more self-confidence. I had an idea where I was going in life, which I hadn't had before. I would have done it again.
And my mind was on other things, getting home, getting settled, getting ready to get married. Sweetheart, high school sweetheart. They consolidated the Mason schools, all the little schools out in the country, into the city. And that was when I was in the 4th grade. So I met her then, but I knew all about her family because my mother was a longtime Mason resident too. And my grandpa and them, they didn't get along with my future wife's family. So I heard all the bad things about my future wife's family and knew all about her before I ever saw her. And she teased me all the way up to the senior year. She really supported me my whole life. I'll be honest with you. And I was going to go to California. That was where the jobs were, in TV station work and that. Either New York, Chicago, or California. Mary never objected to anything. I could buy a house, I could buy a car. She never objected. But she said, "I'm not going to California. California, that's too far away from home. We're going back to Mason." So we did. We came back to Mason, and she went back to work right away. And I found a job, and that was it.
When I got discharged, I left. It was in Tennessee. That's where they tried to get me to stay, but I hid. I was anxious to leave the Navy. After being in 5 years, it was what I consider 5 years in hell.
We are grateful for stories shared by these veterans as they reflect on their service and their lives, preserving the lessons learned from one of the most transformational periods in modern history, helping future generations understand the complexity of ordinary people who live through extraordinary times. Their message is clear: remember, honor, and protect the freedoms that many sacrificed everything to defend.
When you're 10th of 10 kids, the military is nothing. You learn to fight every day when you're 10th. I had 2 brothers and a sister that were also in the service. I think it's a good experience for everybody. Women and men all should serve a couple years, and then you can get your education free. That's kind of what happened to me. I got Ohio State, you know.
I don't think I'd do a thing different. Everybody didn't have service like I did. I thank Harry Truman every day. I really do. If it wasn't for Harry Truman, we'd have probably had to invade Japan. And that's what I was being primed for.
You can fly in a squadron and never be seen. We have that capability today, and I'm part of that group that's done that. If you can't see him, you can't hit him. You can't know he's even within 1,000 miles of you. But you can see him, but he can't see you. And any country that has that capability can win the war, hands down. That's why we can win a war, and he can't. You better be ready for the next war, because I'm telling you, it is going to be something that you never want to see in your lifetime.
I think we live on the edge of an atomic war, and that's scary. That's just frightening. Young people don't appreciate that, and I guess we did a lousy job in educating them. You hope that at least some of the lessons that we learned will be learned by the people today. A lot of people died to make this country what it is. I was reminded of that again in going to Arlington. You can't go to Arlington and experience that without a sense of awe that a lot of guys in there died who didn't want to die, didn't want that, didn't expect that would happen to them, but would do it again. Honor those who made your life possible.
These extraordinary gentlemen didn't ask to be called heroes, but history will remember them that way because of what they gave, what they endured, and what they believed in. Today, the Mason community says thank you for your service, your courage that shaped our history, and your sacrifices that preserved our freedom. May we never forget, and may we always listen.